Yes, they are. CNN security analyst, retired Marine Special Operations Officer Kelly McCann, Supreme Commander, now CNN military analyst, General Wesley Clark. Gentlemen.
General Clark, you've heard, and we know that the American military has dropped millions of these pamphlets urging Iraqi soldiers to surrender, and there's some suggestion they will surrender in large numbers. What do you do with them at that point? Does that bog you down as you try to move forward?
It could, and this is one of the reasons that so many of us old ground pounders have said, let's get a large force there. Because when you start trying to deal with a lot of people surrendering, it takes away your own military manpower and your flexibility and capability. We don't have a large force there right now, honestly. I mean, the force on the ground is actually fairly modest in terms of troop strength. So my guess is we're going to use our special forces there. They're going to be working with the Iraqi opposition, and we'll probably do minimal with the prisoners ourselves. We'll probably turn them over to the Iraqi opposition with U.S. Special Operations Forces to be secured.
In fact, speaking of Special Operations Forces, a former officer in those forces, it's a safe bet, but not been announced by the Pentagon, that some of your former colleagues are already there, in country, in Iraq, doing their job. Is that why we just got this report from Wolf Blitzer that 10 surface-to-surface batteries were hit in the no-fly zone? Usually the hits that have occurred in the no-fly zone, of course, have been against air defenses or radars, the kind of things that can threaten our planes. Now, rightly, we're attacking batteries that can fly surface-to-surface, that is, attack troops on the ground to protect your former guys, right?
It is among the mission areas, of course, to do threat assessments, target assessments, confirm the target list, to go out there and do deep reconnaissance, check avenues of access to make sure that things are made ready. But it's not the time to put them in a particular place, because with a little backward planning, the opposition forces could easily look at time and distance variables and have a vector to go look for people. But suffice to say, they're what we call wiring the country up.
Well, now what does that mean? Just tell me, what are they equipped with? What are they there to do? To find Scud missiles to protect them from launching on Qatar, Kuwait, Israel, to look for weapons of mass destruction? What's their mission?
Well, to have a good special operations plan, it's integral to the planning from the very beginning. It's always a bastard child, if you will, brought in late, and usually your success rate goes significantly, down. So from the beginning, it's been considered, what do we do with these men? What's the best use of them? They are out now, again, acquiring routes. They're trying to confirm targets still exist where we thought they exist. Right. They're trying to see if there's troop movements and report that back to the J3 so they can make adjustments. The J2 is going to rudder steer. They're busy guys. And they're trying to avoid any kind of contact. Right. When the mission starts, or just prior to it, then they go into perhaps short-term raids or direct action missions. They could attack to support strategic objectives, operational issues, or specific tactical intermediary objectives to make it easier for conventional forces.
So, General Clark, you were explaining a couple of minutes ago how hard it's been to find Scud missiles, which, as you said, are 60 to 70 feet long. How hard, then, will it be to find Saddam Hussein and his sons?
Well, it may or may not be hard. It depends on what kind of signature they have. And as he starts losing command posts, if he's still in there fighting, and he may try to take personal direction of the battle, I mean, we don't know. He may create a signature. But in general, I think what we have to do is not focus on Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein is not important in this battle. Osama bin Laden is important. Saddam Hussein, he's the head of a government. What you have to do is take over the country, occupy his palaces, take the seat of government, destroy his ministries, take his files, remove his communications. As an individual, Saddam Hussein's not going to do anything. He's not going to survive very long. He's hated. If he gets away and goes to a neighboring country, fine. He won't survive very long there. He's not a cult figure. So what we don't want to do is, I hope, and I'm just suggesting this, obviously, let's don't make Saddam Hussein the cult figure. The cult figure, the guy we want, is Osama bin Laden. Saddam Hussein, we want the government. We want that regime changed. We want people in there that we can trust, that'll participate in the world the right way. But Saddam Hussein, as an individual, he's nothing once we're into that country and into Baghdad.
I must say that's going to be a tough sell to the American public, though, that, here we've initiated this war in Iraq, and really in the end it doesn't really matter whether they get Saddam Hussein.
It's a tough political argument to make, because in the United States we always personalize our enemy. We want somebody that we can really dislike, and Saddam Hussein is a very dislikable guy. And he is a terrible guy. He's got a terrible record. He should be a war criminal. As far as I know, he hasn't been indicted. But he should be. I mean, he's done some reprehensible things. And if we capture him, fine. But we can accomplish all of our missions without capturing Saddam Hussein.
Kelly, let me get you to personalize it to the guys on our side. Every one of them a son or a daughter, a father of an American family here. What are we doing to protect them? We've seen reports about potential Iraqi terrorists, perhaps even dressed in look-alike U.S. uniforms, maybe fake surrenders where they could come into an American camp and use terrorist tactics to harm. What are we doing to protect our guys in the field?
Education, number one. We actually started a structure called Force Protection Command, which actually is on site to protect the rear area. It's much more beefed up. We have lots better technology and have had better strides in education to make troops aware of the cleverness of deception like that. There are also some things that would be very difficult to duplicate in uniforms. Without getting into it, it would be very difficult to obtain the same kind of signature. Some low-tech tactics that Saddam Hussein tries to use will be worthwhile. Some will be fruitless, and he doesn't know that they're going to be fruitless, but our troops do. So you should have confidence in your kids.
Okay. Kelly McCann, General Wesley Clark, thank you both. We'll be hearing much more from both of you in the coming days. Thank you. Deadline is getting closer, 18 minutes to be precise. Before we get there, one of our viewers suggests a way to teach the French, the Germans, and the Russians, remember them, a lesson for their obstructionism. And next, a man who has come about as close as anyone in the world to understanding Saddam Hussein. We'll talk to Saddam's biographer in just a moment. We'll be right back.
Now that is a delicious-looking bowl of pasta.
Please give our compliments to the gentleman at table 40 on the Weather Channel.
This show is brought to you by Comcast.
Is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Welcome back to Crossfire, coming to you live as always from the George Washington University here in downtown Washington. It is 15 minutes to the deadline in Iraq, and as the clock ticks down, is there any chance Saddam Hussein will leave anytime soon? Joining us now is a man who has studied the Iraqi dictator inside and out, Andrew Coburn, the author of Out of the Ashes, The Resurrection of Saddam Hussein.
Andrew, thank you for joining us. Important topic tonight, obviously. The book title, Out of the Ashes. Is there any chance that the Saddam family will be out on their asses and just take the exile offer from Bush and get the hell out of Dodge?
Well, he'd have to run to the airport, I think, 15 minutes.
Yeah, he's got about 14 minutes now.
Yeah, he'd clear the traffic for him. But no, and I never thought he would. I mean, he's not a guy who was ever going to take the option of running away for two reasons.
Bahrain today offered him safe haven.
Yeah, but he would never. First of all, he wouldn't trust them not to turn him over to the Americans, and he'd be strung up somewhere. Right. And secondly, he's very conscious, his dignity, his place in history. But he talks. He's talked in the past about, how they'll be looking at me in 200 years. Sort of. He sees himself as part of a long line of great rulers of Mesopotamia and Iraq. So he'll be conscious of that. Also, I mean, he's been in tight spots before. There was a time in 1964 when he was on the run. His party had been forced from power. The house he was in with two companions was surrounded by the police. They were shooting, calling him to surrender, and then shooting. And one of his companions said, "Let's pack it in," And he said, "No, we'll fight to the last bullet, and then we'll try and get away." So that's his kind of mindset. This is a tough street guy, and he's not going to pack it in.
Well, it's not, as the president said the other day, it's not simply Saddam the U.S. is interested in, but his sons. Tell us about Uday, for instance, or Uday, his son.
He's the elder one. He's a very scary individual indeed. I mean, Saddam, even today in Iraq, has had a certain charisma. People fear him, but he's Saddam. There's a certain respect for him. Uday, people simply fear. He's kind of a psychopath. He's got, most of the terrible stories you hear about him are true. He's chairman of the Iraqi Olympic Committee, for example. It's the only Olympic committee that has its own jail because people who offend him, he sticks in the jail, including members of the Iraqi football team. If you go and watch Iraq play a soccer match, the guys with shaven heads are the ones who played badly last time and have done a spell in Choki to sort of motivate them properly for this time. He's very greedy. He dominates the smuggling scene in Iraq. He's amassed a huge fortune, which obviously won't do him much good now. I mean, he's been the one grasping for money. Even Saddam's complained about him. Saddam called him, a useless playboy, I remember on one occasion. He's just a very scary and unpleasant person.
Well, now, how about the brother Qusay then? He's no better, is he?
Well, he's more interesting. He's not, Uday's out there. He's just a sort of arrogant, bloodthirsty lout. Qusay's smart. I mean, the one occasion I had an opportunity to observe them, Qusay was like he was the deferential younger kid, but my wife, who was actually sitting with them, described him as the guy you meet at the high school dance who'd rather be at home dissecting rats. You know, she said he was that creepy, very creepy individual indeed, but smart. And
what's been his sphere of power within the
oh, bigger and bigger. I mean, for 10 years, he's been in charge of all the security services. He, really, after Saddam, he's been the next guy. He's the guy that Saddam trusts, not only to be loyal.
Security services being the ones who carry out the torture.
Carry out the torture, you know, arrest the people to torture, you know, find out who to torture, spy on each other. He's the guy that Saddam trusts to be loyal, of course, but also to be smart. So he's a very significant individual.
You said 30 years ago Saddam was trapped in a house with two companions under attack from the police. First, how did he get out?
Well, he did fight till the end of his last bullet, and then he tried to run away, and he was, in fact, captured. But he went down fighting, got into jail, and actually pretty soon escaped from jail.
So what's going to happen? I mean, what do you envision his last stand to look like at this point? Is he going to fight it out, do you think, from what you know of him?
I think he will, yeah. I think it's exactly what he'll do. I don't think he's never going to pack it in. I think he'll try and stay on the run. He's an optimist, you know. He's been in tight spots before. I think, you know, this is what he'll be thinking right now. You know, things have been bad before. You know, that time in after he was displaced from power, a time before that when he tried his first big assassination attempt. He tried to kill the president of Iraq. The attempt failed. He was wounded. He had to flee. He got away across the desert. 1982, the Iranians had broken through. His forces were in pell-mell retreat. Saddam, you know, he thought at that time it was all up with him. But, you know, he lasted through. And I'm sure what's going through his mind right now is things are pretty bad. You know, it looks black, but there may still be a chance.
So you're describing someone who's irrational, it sounds like.
Well, he hasn't got much option, you know. I mean, if all your choices are bad, you might as well fasten on the one.
Go to Bahrain, I mean, or Saudi Arabia.
Well, no, because then, you know, first of all, he thinks they'll probably turn him over to the Americans. He doesn't trust them. He doesn't trust them not to kill him, which is probably that's not irrational, because remember, he knows a lot. He knows who he bribed over the years. He knows all the secrets of, you know, who he's done deals with, which a lot of people outside Iraq would not want publicized.
The New York Times today painted an amazing picture, John F. Burns, the reporter, about Saddam in one of his bunkers, meeting with his senior lackeys, underground in a low ceiling but white marbled walls. And Mr. Burns, the reporter, compared the picture to Hitler in his bunker in Berlin as the Allied army came around him.
Well, that's, you know, it's an apt comparison, although in the last war, he didn't go to a bunker. You know, we kept blowing up bunkers trying to kill him, and in fact, he was never in a bunker. He just moved into an ordinary middle-class house in the Mansour district, or one of the upscale district in Baghdad, just took it over. No one knew where he was. He drove around, someone I talked to who saw him during the war, who was the head of military intelligence at the time, said he'd turn up just at intelligence headquarters in a car with one driver, one guy, anonymous little car. So that's what he's really good at, is, you know, fading into the crowd, if you will. I don't think he'd be stupid enough to hide out in a bunker, because he would never be that confident that the U.S. wouldn't find it and bomb it. I think he'll be, Baghdad's a big city. I think he'll be somewhere where you just wouldn't know to look.
Well, we are almost out of time, but so is Saddam Hussein. He has 8 minutes left. He's not leaving, is he?
No. Fast drive, planes waiting, who knows?
Any chance, well, a few seconds left, any chance, though, of a coup or an assassination by his military leaders?
That is always possible. Something he thinks is always possible. Right. So, and he's probably good at judging these things, so you never know.
Terrific. Andrew Coburn is the name. Thank you very much. Out of the Ashes, the book, A Biography of Saddam Hussein. It's an amazing read. Thank you very much, Andrew. We have just enough time before the deadline, of course, to let our viewers fire back at us. One of them has a reminder that even on the verge of war, all of us still have the right to free speech. Stay with us.
Back at Crossfire, email us at crossfire@cnn.com. Make sure to include your name and hometown.
The
the best coverage from around the world. Every weekend, stay with CNN and see what happens next.
As the world faces the possibility of war, CNN is there.
Christiana Manpour, CNN, reporting from Kuwait.
Jerusalem.
Baghdad.
With the largest team of journalists on the front lines.
Resist aggressions against Iraq as well.
From right here in the U.S.
The White House.
CNN, United Nations.
The Pentagon.
To the Middle East and beyond.
In Tel Aviv. From Istanbul.
Kabul.
As the showdown with Iraq continues, stay with CNN.
Closed captioning provided by Auric 8-pound upright vacuum.
Looking for a lightweight vacuum that's really powerful? Try my Auric XL free for 30 days. Nothing gets by an Auric.
Welcome back to Crossfire. On the verge of war, we are not yet at war, and so it's perfectly fine for me and everybody else to continue our political debates. We've put them aside for tonight, but not for Fireback. Many of our viewers have some strong opinions about many of the topics we've been talking about on the show lately. Let's begin with Patrick Drew of Green Bay, Wisconsin, talking about the UN resolution. Do you know why Mr. Bush didn't get the votes he needed at the UN? He didn't have Catherine Harris or his brother Jeb counting the ballots. Well, that's what our guys are fighting for, though, the right for Patrick Drew and me and everybody else to make fun of our leader. And
that's part of what they're fighting for. Yeah, probably a small part.
Well,
Josh Rush of Scottsdale writes, since France, Germany, and Russia derailed diplomacy by removing the threat of serious consequences at the hand of the UN, I think it's only fair that Congress earmark all the aid we provide those nations to offset the costs of doing the UN's dirty work. All right, Josh.
Well, I don't think we provide a whole lot of aid.
Well, that's probably true, but it's symbolic, Paul.
That's the problem. The trade or the aid. I guess no more Russian dressing if we're going to have freedom fries and have all this patriotic correctness. Brian Gridley, by the way, can we eat turkey if the country of Turkey doesn't let us use their... I'm lost. Sorry, Brian Gidley of Evans, Georgia, writes about the enormous contretemps, the huge backlash from the ultra-right over Tom Daschle's rather sensible critique of the president's foreign policy. He writes, since when did it become unpatriotic for an elected representative to use his free speech rights to criticize the failed policies of a presidential administration? You know, you could agree or disagree with Daschle's comments, but the counterattack from the far right, Tucker, was astonishing.
Nobody's questioning his right to say it. It's when Congressman Pete Stark, Democrat of California, accuses the U.S. military of terrorism, as he did tonight. I'm not saying he shouldn't have the right to say it. He does have the right, but it's still
nonsense. But Daschle, I think Daschle
Rick of Dixmont, Maine writes, how can Secretary Ridge go on all the morning shows and state we are prepared for another attack when a nut with a tractor has had downtown Washington tied up for 3 days?
Now, our viewers at home may not know about this because CNN's been covering more important news, but Rick ain't making that up. There's some lunatic reports out that he's a tobacco farmer and he's parked his tractor in a pond by the Washington Monument.
Why didn't they get him with a tranquilizer dart? That's my question.
Yeah.
Yes!
Hi, I'm Jillian Frumkin from Buffalo Grove, Illinois. We continue to hear about steps that will be taken after the U.S. wins the war, but what will define a win?
Well, General Clark, I thought, was wonderfully eloquent about that. I mean, we have very, very high objectives our president has set. It's not only to depose Saddam Hussein, it's not only to disarm his weapons of mass destruction, but it is to bring a democracy and freedom to the Iraqi people, which is a very important, noble goal, but I think it's going to be awfully difficult to pull off.
Well, I think the lives of everyone in Iraq are going to be improved the moment Saddam Hussein leaves, and that's a win. Yes?
Hi, Aaron Schofield from Washington, D.C. Is it possible for our forces to have any surprise advantage with the intense media coverage that the war plans are getting right now?
Well, not in some general sense. I mean, I think Saddam Hussein has caught on that something's afoot at this point. But, you know, the exact time, as the president said, is unknown. Even CNN doesn't know it, and that gives you a sense of how secret it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought Jamie McIntyre at the beginning of the show, reporting from the Pentagon, he's CNN senior Pentagon correspondent, pointing out that it's like putting a field goal kicker on ice. Kelly McCann, the major from the Marines, said that this is like one of the worst things we can do is torment them with this waiting time. So good for them. I support the strategy, even if I don't always agree with the president. From the left, I am Paul Begala. Good night for Crossfire.
From the right, I'm Tucker Carlson. Join us again next time for yet more Crossfire with less than 1 minute until the deadline in Iraq. Connie Chung tonight begins right now. Have a great night.